I almost feel like I do have to step back a little bit because I don't want to overwhelm the people or the audience. And I'm sure if I show up with a really low energy, you feel like you have to go very, very high to make sure that we don't lose credibility. And I think that's kind of our journey over the last 7 years.
When someone's in an empowered energy and you're not, you have to try to match it, and you can't match it authentically sometimes. Sometimes I just tell Emilia, I can't play at that right now. I need to just be, it needs to be okay that I'm down.
Next Level Nation, welcome back to another episode of Next Level University, where we help you level up your life, your love, your health, and your wealth. Today, for episode number 1778, sometimes triggers are a reminder of progress. So, Alan and I had an interesting experience last week. I think it was on Wednesday or Thursday. So, at this point together, Alan and I have probably done, I don't know, well over 2,000 podcast episodes, speeches, trainings, team trainings, group coaching sessions, coaching calls together. Right, we're over 2,000 for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
15 groups of group coaching. Well, 14 groups times 6, that's what, 84. So we're definitely over.
Mm-hmm.
And we haven't gone on a podcast together other than this one, NLU, in years, probably at least 2 years, if not 3.
Yeah.
So we went on a podcast together, and there was 2 co-hosts, and there was Alan and myself. And I texted Alan after, and I said, "Strange life, huh?" And I think he just gave me like a ha-ha or something. But we both knew that we were going to end up talking about how weird it was for us to do this together. And my takeaway and my thesis was, dude, it's really hard for me to do podcasts with other people with you because I always know you're kind of judging my answers. Not in a bad way. But this podcast is about branding. Like, I'm not the branding guy. If this podcast was purely about podcasts, I feel like I would have felt really comfortable. But it was about branding, and that's just not my jam. I'm not a branding, I don't consider myself a branding expert. And I know you don't really either, but you know a lot about it. So we had a little debrief later in the week, and we were talking about how I was triggered for sure. It brought me back to the old not good enough, not smart enough, overlooked underdog. And again, I don't have to be the center of attention. I don't have to be the guy on the interview. I don't care about that. A lot of the times on the team calls, I am not the guy. Alan is the guy. Alan is the leader. Alan is the one who is facilitating the conversation. On group coaching, I'm co-coach. Alan's head coach. Amy's assistant coach. So I don't have to be the guy. But it was just a weird reflection of, oh my goodness, it's way harder to do podcast episodes with you than it is on my own because it triggers little Kev.
Do you think that because you are the podcast guy and it was a podcast, that was part of it?
I think that's probably a piece of it. What I told Alan is, on our platform, and it's even hard to explain, my assumption is that Alan is the smart one and Kevin is the funny, philosophical one. But like funnily philosophical. If I was going to make my own podcast right now based on what I know, that's what it would be called. Funny philosophy. That's what I would name it. Because that's kind of who I am. But on other platforms, people don't necessarily know the dynamic. You know what I mean? They don't really know. It's like the genius and the funny guy. That's kind of our thing. So yeah, I think that's a piece of it for me.
The other thing that I think you tell a story about how me and Eddie were talking business and you got insecure. Is that the same feeling?
I think there's pieces of it. Yeah, I think there's pieces of it. Yeah.
Because you told me I wanted to perform, but I didn't want to not be me.
I didn't want to ego up.
Yeah, I think that when we're backed up against a corner and we're in over our head in anything, and it's not even like you're in over your head, but maybe a little with branding, honestly, in hindsight.
I was insecure. I think it's just when you're insecure, your ego tries to protect you, and there's 2 things. You either shell up and say nothing, or you try to take the conversation and show, like, I have value too, and then you you might ego up. I was trying to live somewhere in the middle. And I told Alan, I said, I think I had more ego than I wanted. I don't know if any other human on the planet would recognize it. I don't know. But I had a moment where I was like, this isn't, I'm not being the normal, I'm not 100% authentic. I'm not 100% Kev right now. Maybe
What
it's
were
because...
you? What percentage?
90.
So I was going to say it wasn't huge.
No. But
I think as we've matured, we talked about this on yesterday's episode, you still ego up, you just don't, it's a smaller percent error.
Yeah.
So we were talking about how when we listen to old episodes, when we go back to the hundreds, it's brutal for us because we sense a lot of ego and inauthenticity, which I think is an overcompensation for some sort of insecurity. My insecurity, I think, is being afraid of showing too much, maybe too much, unrelatable, not going to be liked. I think your insecurity is, am I going to be smart enough or good enough or whatever? Yeah. And either way, we both feel insecure, and either way, we both have an ego reaction to that. I think the percent of ego has gotten way smaller, though. And I would say that... Go ahead.
I was going to say, what is your ego reaction to being too much? Because I feel like it's not be less. I think it's like be more.
Yeah, sometimes it's be less. A lot of times it's be less. You just might not even notice it. But then if I have to perform... So this is why it was hard for me to watch the Next Level Live speech. I did a good job, but there's a lot of people in the room that I can sense their discomfort. And when other people are uncomfortable and insecure, I get insecure about not being liked. And then I either go docile and dim, or what I call Achilles up. I ego up. And I egoed up because when you're performing, you can't just go docile. Remember that high school speech where I went up and you went down and you just kind of sat up against the whiteboard and just because you were triggered? And that's the other piece of this too. When it's both of us, if I'm egoing up, you almost have to settle in down in order to, we can't both be
it's too intense.
At that intensity. But here's the thing that I think I've found really challenging is my intensity actually is at that level. So I'm always dialing my intensity down, but no one knows it. So I'm trying to figure out how to do this, but I would say 90% of the time, I'm actually dialing down my intensity, not dialing it up. It's just less than it used to be. And so to you, it'll feel like... So for example, let's use that 4-person interview. And this is the first time we ever did a 4-person interview since Evolve Ventures back in 4 years ago. And so, and back then it was called the Why Power Podcast. But I knew it would be interesting. It seemed like I was probably over. I would say less than most people would think. I feel like that's actually more of the real me. With a little more funnies. I was playful. I was laughing authentically because I actually thought a lot of the stuff that you and him said were really funny. Mm-hmm. But I would say that's my actual intensity and energy. And this goes back to what you and I used to talk about or have talked about, the set point. Dude, Emilia and I, when we woke up this morning, I mean, right now I'm settled in. I'm kind of tired. I've got a whole day ahead of me, so I'm conserving my energy. But we were singing and dancing this morning. Like, I'm always on, almost always. And so I'm usually dialing it down for other people because they have an energetic set point that's much lower.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why I think a lot of people, I have one client in particular, his name's Cole, and he said, I don't understand how you operate the way that you do. And I've tried to explain that, I don't know, it's almost like everybody has their own energetic set point. So yours is lower than mine, I know that, because when we travel together, you're always the one who wants to hang more than me. You're the lower energy human, and that's fine. But a lot of times what I've come to understand is that if I'm high energy and it triggers someone else's insecurity, and I can feel their insecurity, I'll purposely dial down my energy, or if I have to perform, I'll actually dial it too far up, and I'll increase my intensity to keep them at arm's length. And I'm starting to understand that vulnerability for me is actually just sitting in the empowered energy, even if it is too much. NLU listener, what is happening? I just wanted to jump in here and let you know if you want to get to the next level faster, we have a free virtual monthly meetup at the first Thursday of every month, 6 p.m. Eastern Time. You can connect with like-minded people and become a bigger part of this amazing global community. The link to register will be in the show notes.
In fairness, though, yes, you're definitely you have higher energy than I do. But like hypothetically, when we travel, you get to nap and I drive.
That's fair. That's true.
And you usually sleep more than I do, and I usually get up before you.
That's true. That's very
now,
true.
again, I think you still are higher energy, but
yeah,
it's almost
that's
like
a factor. That's a factor. 100%.
On the trip, I realized that you're higher energy, so I just do things that I don't want you to have to do. I think that's one of the reasons I drive.
That's the team mentality. Yeah. It's almost like you're putting the team on your back.
And I like driving.
But in this instance, but that's also a piece of it too, is I remember you said you didn't get sick for 9 years and how weird that is. And I've been wondering a lot as to why that is, and I want to make this valuable for the listeners, so I don't want it to just be about us. But what if that's because of the compound effect of always making sure I do get enough sleep, always making sure I do hydrate enough, and all that kind of stuff? And
yeah, I think it is.
And then what if that becoming more and taking really good care of yourself, what if that actually... I tell this story often about a kid when I was back in college. I went to a party and his name was Matt, and I was so intimidated, but also inspired. He was attractive. He was the life of the party. He was funny. He seemed like a good dude. He was charismatic. He had a wealthy family, at least compared to mine, and he just had it all. He had a beautiful girlfriend. He had tons of friends. He was just the man, and he was jacked out of his mind. At least for back then, it was ridiculous. And I remember thinking, that is an empowered energy, and I think a lot of people are insecure around an empowered energy, just in general. That's been...
because they don't know whether it's empowered or arrogant.
I know.
Going back to what we talked about yesterday or the day before.
And I think, ironically, my fear of it being seen as arrogant actually makes it come off more arrogant. That's been what I've come to at 35, and I'm still trying to figure all this out. But
well, it's like if you... what's a good example? Like if you're insecure about something and then you make a joke about it, but it highlights the fact that you're insecure, not you, just anybody, then it's almost like, I don't know. I feel like that joke was out of insecurity and not confidence. I don't have a good example. I know you're probably going to ask for a good example. I don't have one necessarily. The other thing, and we got to go in a couple minutes, but the other thing that really, and again, Alan and I have had these conversations behind the scene. It's not like I'm calling him out live. I am, but not really. I said it kind of felt like the old days where you and I would have an interview, like a really big interview. I would get to the studio like 3 hours early. I'd make sure the camera was good, the lights were good, our seats were good, everything was ready, the links were sent out, and then you'd roll in 1 minute before and be like, yo, what's good, man? And I would always be so pissed off because I would feel like I was shouldering the cognitive load of making sure that the interview got done.
Yeah, I saw that you sent them an email before, I did. Of
course. That. Yeah, I had to get the link.
So you have to overcome that too, just to get back to neutral.
That's the thing is like, back to neutral, there's so many things going on. I showed up 2 minutes early. Alan, I think, was 6 minutes late. Yeah. And then just from there, and Alan had an important coaching call before. It's not like he was twiddling his thumbs.
Yeah, thank you.
You're very welcome. Or he was twiddling his thumbs. Either one. I don't know.
by myself, just biding my time so that you're in a disempowered energy. I would never do that, dude.
No, I know that.
Yeah, I know.
But I think that's a really good example of contrast. If you roll in empowered, I just got off an awesome coaching call, I'm living my purpose, and I'm literally holding space, having small talk with people I don't know until you get in the room, and then you come in super empowered, it really is. It's really, really hard to... Yep. I almost feel like I do have to step back a little bit because I don't want to overwhelm the people or the audience. And I'm sure if I show up with a really low energy, you feel you have to go very, very high to make sure that we don't lose credibility. And I think that's kind of our journey over the last 7 years.
I know, and we finally get it. I'm starting to actually get this because when someone's in an empowered energy and you're not, you have to try to match it, and you can't match it authentically sometimes. Sometimes I just tell Emilia, I can't play at that right now. I need to just be, it needs to be okay that I'm down.
Tara and I have had a conversation. When I return home from travel, we don't spend almost any time together immediately My energy from travel is so much different than hers from being home. I'll literally go in the living room and watch TV for like half the day.
Are you up and she's down, or the opposite?
It's just a energetic, like the energy is very calm when I'm not here. Because when I'm here, it's just, there's mayhem. I'm running to the bathroom in between calls, filling up my water, blah, 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 blah. Hey, babe, I love you. Give me a kiss. When I'm not here, she has full reign to just move about the cabin, for lack of better phrasing. So when I get back, I'm always overwhelmed. Just like cognitively, it's like so much happened when I was away. And she's very calm. So we've learned, because she'll say, like, your energy is so much for me right now. Yeah. So now we kind of plan on not having the first half of the day together, no matter when I get home. 7 a.m, midnight.
The energetics of this, I know we got to jump.
Yeah, we got to go now.
That is something that has alarmingly not been on my radar in my life. I wish that it was more. I think it was unconsciously, but I'm going to be very conscious of the very first session of group coaching. There's 6 of them. The first session's the hardest for me. And it's not the hardest for me because I'm afraid of speaking or adding value. It's the hardest for me because I'm afraid to be all of me.
Right.
It's a lot of energies that need to sync and match in order to, and we used to just jump right into teaching. Worst idea ever. Now
lessons were learned.
It's get to know your goals, get to know your group, get to know your guides, and it's much better now. But I think whenever you enter a room, just remember you are mirroring and matching and trying to get in sync with the energies in the room. And I think just making the awareness on that is already going to be really helpful for anyone who hasn't considered this yet. Because I didn't start considering this until Emilia a couple years ago.
Well, it does sound wonky. It's one of those things that sounds really. It's like, what do you mean the energies are different when you get home? It's like they just are. I don't know how to explain it.
You're in different places. You're not on the same wavelength. You're not on the same page.
Frequency.
Frequency. Yeah, exactly.
All right, we're going to go. You dig it?
Yeah, man. I think even right now and today, we were working on getting in the same frequency on this podcast. And you can tell when we're not on the same frequency, too.
Well, it's really hard. So it's Saturday. We're recording this. Usually we have time to connect. It's 9. We started at 9:30. And it's like, okay, we got to do an episode. I can't catch up. We can't talk. I don't care. I can't. I have to make sure this gets produced the way it's supposed to, right? But yeah, you'll notice that we're talking over each other probably more than usual, and yeah, it's a frequency thing. Okay, speaking of frequency, if you frequently are trying to get to the next level, make sure you subscribe to this podcast so you never miss an opportunity to do so, whether you're watching on YouTube or listening to us on a podcast platform. As always, we love you. We appreciate you. Grateful for each and every one of you. And at NLU, we don't have fans. We have family. We will talk to you all tomorrow.
Keep that authentic energy. Next Level Nation.